Good morning and welcome to another edition of Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDEC. I'm Darren Swenson. Our Town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. Got a full about an hour of programming this morning. A little later on in the program, we'll talk to Decorah School Superintendent Mark Lane. We'll also get a legislative update talking to State Representative Mike Bergan. We'll check in with the Turkey Valley Education Foundation. They've got their big event coming up next week. It'll be held virtually, and the meal will be a drive-through meal. We'll be talking with Dave Anderson about that event. But our first guest this morning, we'll talk about the fun stuff coming up in the city of Waukon this weekend and all other things related to the Waukon Area Chamber of Commerce with Chamber Director Leddia Tallman. This is Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDEC. Having a conversation this morning with Leddia Tallman from the Waukon Chamber of Commerce. Always a lot of things going on with the Chamber of Commerce. And Leddia, obviously a big day coming up in Waukon on Sunday with the St. Patrick's Day events. And it looks like that's going to be a full go this year. Last year, it kind of got the halt got put to that at the last second. But good to have that community event back and maybe not full bore, but pretty much a regular event back on the schedule this year.
Yes, so I can talk a little bit about that. The St. Patrick's Day Parade is scheduled for Sunday, March 14th, and that'll be at 1 o'clock. It'll be the same route as last year or the year prior, beginning at WW Homestead Dairy's parking lot, and then going towards St. Patrick's Catholic Church. Then there will also be events held following that. So WW Dairy will be having, before and after the St. Patrick's Day Parade, they'll be having the coffee bar open all day, serving hot or iced coffee and hot chocolate, and they'll have curds available and other treats available for them to enjoy before and after. And then following the parade from 2 to 6 p.m., the Caminos will be at Goodfellows Bar. And then J.R. Brink Band will be there from 7 to 11. Lids Bar and Grill will also be having the Corey Farley Band from 4 to 8 p.m. And then Thoroughbred DJ and Karaoke will be at Green Valley Getaway, and that starts at 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then I believe that the City Club will also be having the Toe Tappers again.
So it'll be a busy day and a fun day coming up on Sunday in Waukon. And just going through the Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page, looks like a lot of business openings, a lot of job opportunities throughout the community of Waukon. Looks like things from an economic standpoint are definitely moving in the right direction. Would you agree?
I do agree with that. We're looking forward to the new businesses coming to town as well.
And all sorts of job opportunities have been posted on that site. If employers have job opportunities, or if people are looking for job opportunities in the Waukon area, what do you suggest that they do?
I say that they just look at our Facebook page or the Waukon Chamber of Commerce, or they can look at Almakeek County Economic Development's Facebook page because they actually put together that job board. They can also contact Terry at, you can call 563-568-2624. And that's for people asking for jobs or people that want to put a job listing into this job board. Or you can contact her via email. It's ACED recep, RECEP @gmail.com. So doing either of those to get in contact about job positions, or like I said, just looking at those Facebook pages.
And one event we talked about, of course, the events going on in Waukon on Sunday, but another one coming up, a craft and vendor show coming up this Saturday to benefit a good cause. I noticed that one on your Facebook page as well. Tell us about that.
So there's going to be a craft fair, basically like a benefit, be catered. One of our chamber members will actually be there for carryout or delivery upon request, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Waukon Banquet Center. They're making homemade meatballs, beef gravy, and a side of homemade mashed potatoes. And then you can also get a slice of ham, some corn, and then a fresh baked dinner roll. And that would be $10 a plate. And the proceeds will go to the family of Ashley Plagman. So basically, the backstory behind that is her life was cut short, and now her boyfriend is taking care of 2 little kids. So he's being a fill-in single father, basically, and they're just trying to have a benefit to go towards helping raise those children and help pay for the cost of what happened.
Obviously, it's going to be a busy weekend in Waukon. What are some maybe other activities that will be happening here in the short term, or maybe other things folks need to know about from the chamber perspective?
I don't really think there's a whole lot going on other than our annual meeting tomorrow. From noon to 1, our chamber members can Zoom into that, and they've been provided with the Zoom link for that information. We have also been talking about doing our annual banquet, and we're working on setting up a date for Corn Days. I'd be happy to talk next month or in a couple weeks about upcoming events, because it seems like we have quite a bit that are on the schedule for this year.
And it seems like with the way things are going and the regulations getting eased a little bit, and the way vaccinations are going as well, a lot of those events you can maybe plan for with a little bit more certainty this year than you could in 2020. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I hope it stays that way.
All right. Any other things we need to bring up, as long as we got you on the line this morning?
I would just say to plan in April, just in case we don't talk prior to that, on April 3rd. They are planning to have the Easter egg hunt by the Waukon Family Fun Fest. So just put that on your calendars to get ready for that.
Leddia, we appreciate your time as always. Appreciate everything the Chamber of Commerce does for the community, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again next month.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Leddia Tallman from the Waukon Chamber of Commerce. Our next guest this morning will be discussing the Turkey Valley Education Association. This segment may go a little longer because him and I both like to gab a lot. His name, Dave Anderson. He is with the Turkey Valley Education Association, and obviously there's a lot of pride with a lot of small town school districts, and Turkey Valley district folks take a lot of pride in their districts, and they usually step up to help the folks and the students of that district very well. First of all, Dave, we'll get to the events here in a couple of minutes that will be coming up next week, but tell us what is the Turkey Valley Education Association?
Well, Darren, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Our group and myself, we certainly appreciate everything you do for Northeast Iowa and allowing me to be on here and talk about it. When the foundation was founded back in 2009, there were some really incredibly insightful people that decided to do this and put this together. They saw some of the shortcomings in the budgets, and they saw some of the things that were not happening or going to happen. So they really were insightful. And to name, I won't go through the whole list, but one of the primary persons that really pushed this, although she was never an original board member, and I'm hoping that her 2 kids, Dan and Kathy, will be listening to this video too, but that's Marilyn Hageman. She was one of our teachers at Turkey Valley, a Turkey Valley grad. She really pushed for this to happen, to have this foundation board. And so our goal is to enhance and support the educational opportunities for our kids at Turkey Valley. And you're right, we have some of the most, generous, caring people in our school district, our surrounding areas, from the Decorahs to Cresco to West Union, Calmer, Sumner, those surrounding areas too, where other people from our school district go to work at in days and whatnot as well. So the generosity, not only in our school district, but from other towns is incredible towards our kids and our foundation. And it's it really is pretty special.
And a couple of events coming up next week. You're having them, and obviously with the way the world looks right now, they will be a little bit different of a look. You've usually had an auction and a meal served. That wasn't happening last year, and it will happen this year, and it's going to have a little bit different of a look, as we mentioned. Tell us about what's coming up next week.
Well, it's like everybody's events have been affected by COVID-19, of course, and we just felt like this year we weren't quite comfortable with having a sit down dinner like we've had in years past, and having the auction and whatnot. So we elected to go with our prime rib dinner, our drive-through prime rib dinner, and our auction items are on a Facebook auction as well. And I mean, that's not easy to do, because 3 years ago, Darren, 3 years ago on one night in the Waukon Event Center, we raised $60,000. The next year we raised the bar even higher and raised $65,000. And then the year after that, things came down because the economy wasn't quite as good, and we raised about 40 grand. And so in 3 years we raised $160,000 over 3 years for our students and our staff at Turkey Valley. And not having it last year, that was hard. And we literally were, the week of, we were still kind of in that limbo mode until Governor Reynolds, said, hey, we've got to shut things down. And we did. And so this year we went with the drive-through and the drive-through dinner and the online Facebook auction, the Facebook auction online as well. So, it's we want to keep it out in front of people, but it won't be like normal, much like everything else this year.
And for folks that are interested in purchasing some of the stuff that's on the auction and getting one of those delicious meals, how do they sign up? What do they do?
Okay. First of all, you can go to our Facebook page. Just search Turkey Valley Education Foundation on our Facebook page, and that will get you hooked up to some more information there. You can also call. I'll get my number out here today. There's two numbers you can call. My cell phone number is area code 319-290-3945 if you're looking for tickets, and or also 563-238-7361, and leave a message there for us as well. We're selling the prime rib dinner tickets until the 14th, and that way we know what we're going to need for the meal, which is on Saturday, March 4th. We're serving that meal from 4 to 7 p.m. It's a $30 meal. I don't know if how many people that are listening to this and watching this have ever had the prime rib from Plastic Slacker and Proton, but there's none better. And trust me, I've tried it, and I've been in places in Minneapolis and St. Louis and Louisville and Kansas City. They do a great job, the folks at Plastic Slacker do. And then the fixings will be potatoes and vegetable and salad and whatnot that will come from Bubba's Barbecue in Waukon as well for us. And that's going to be the dinner portion of it. Now, our online auction started on March 4th. It will end on March 17th. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't just people from the Turkey Valley School District or Turkey Valley followers, supporters. There's some incredibly really neat things on there that you can look at, and you go online to that Facebook page. That's how we're hosting this year. And just a couple, 3 examples, just a few. So I don't want to cut anybody out, but the three highlights that I'll throw out there are: there's a trip to Orange Beach, Alabama, donated by family in our school district, and actually one of our school board members, Don Blazek Jr. and his family, donated a trip to Orange Beach, Alabama. They've done that for several years. Really an incredible trip right down on the beach in Alabama. Mary Burns, a Turkey Valley graduate as well. Her and her husband, Dale Christensen, donate a trip out to their cabin in the Black Hills of South Dakota, trout fishing, trails, nature, you name it. That's been a big hit over the years in our auction that we have. There's a wood-fired pellet grill on there. A lot of really, really great items on our auction this year as well. And you don't have to be from Turkey Valley to go on there, comment on it, make a bid on it, and help for a great cause. We are a 503c organization, so the money you spend with us, to be technically correct, you'd have to talk to your tax preparer, but it is tax deductible. And so you'd have to ask your accountant or your tax preparer how they would treat that. But that's a great thing also, is you're not only buying something that might be a good thing, but also you can use that as a tax deduction too. So again, those dates are, the online auction ends on the 17th. That'll give us time to finish details and have the stuff ready to go. And then our meal is the 20th. Ticket sales end on the 14th of March. And you can reach me at 319-290-3945 or leave a message at 563-238-7361. Tickets are $30, and it's a drive-through. It starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and goes till 7 p.m. at the Waukon Event Center in Waukon on Saturday, March 20th.
Back to the goals and the purpose of the foundation itself, are there some examples that you can share with folks of experiences that the young people in your district have gotten to have due to the foundation that otherwise they would not have?
Absolutely, Darren. And some of those are also on our Facebook page. And I know not everybody's a Facebooker either, but we bought a 3D printer for the kids at school to have. We have our junior high kids. I think this is going to be, they're still playing there. I think they're tentatively planning to go this spring yet, but possibly. But I think this would be the fourth time that the junior high kids every other year. Last year they were supposed to go, and of course COVID erased that. But they take the 7th and 8th grade kids that choose to go to Washington D.C. through Legacy Tours up there in Decorah. They take them out to D.C. It's a rolling education. We have funded anywhere. I think the first year or two that they did this, we funded $200 towards each child's cost of that trip to help them defray some expenses and whatnot. And for some of those kids, that's whether they can go or not go. That's just another example. The 5th and 6th grade students at Turkey Valley have made trips down to the state capitol in Des Moines and gone to the Science Center of Iowa and gone to Living History Farms, to go see a good old-fashioned working living history farm type of thing. So wiggle stools for kids in classrooms. We've bought other technology needs that, again, whether it's Turkey Valley or other budgets just don't allow it to be done. And so we're there to take that and help with that. And that's just a few examples. Another example that was highlighted just the other day was every spring, again, in a non-COVID year, the kids get to go on a health and fitness day. They either go to the Cresco Fitness Center in Cresco, they go to Luther College up there and get to play tennis and walk the track and climb the rock wall, or go down to the W in Waverly and get to go swimming and different things down there and experience some things like that. And our school nurse, Natalie Schneider, does that for the kids. And we pay for the busing, we pay for the cost to get into the things. And those are just a few examples.
Give us the final who, what, where, when, and why about the events coming up next week to help out the great cause.
Absolutely. Saturday, March 20th was when we will have the actual meal. Tickets will end our ticket sales ending on the 14th. So we know how much to order for food. We're not taking any drive up or walk in meals that day. But to pick up your meals, it'll be Saturday, March 20th. It'll be from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. at the Waukon Event Center. That meal includes prime rib, mashed potatoes, green beans, a salad, dessert, and a roll with that. And then our online auction on Facebook, which if you just search on Facebook, Turkey Valley Education Foundation, started on March 4th. It will end on March 17th. And then we'll notify each person that won that prospective bid, and then they can work on getting to us at the event center on Saturday the 20th to pick up their said prizes and whatnot. So that's our schedule of events right there, and we're looking forward to it. It's different, it's different, but you've seen it. There's lots and lots of people that have gone to this, and they've had really good success with it too. And so we're looking forward to it. We think we're going to have a great turnout.
Dave, thanks for taking the time to tell us about this, and good luck with the events coming up next week. And thanks to you and everybody with the Turkey Valley Education Association and all the good things they do for the young people in that school district. Absolutely. Appreciate you letting me on, Darren. I appreciate it very much. Dave Anderson with the Turkey Valley Education Foundation. Getting a legislative update with State Representative Mike Bergan of Dorchester joins us live from the Capitol. And Mike, last week was the first final week of the session. Was there anything that didn't get through that you would have liked to see stay alive for the session?
Actually, I think that we did a pretty good job of sorting through some of the priorities for the session. Certainly some of the things that passed will continue to need some work, but I do not have any disappointments at this point in time. And seemingly there's always measures that just get thrown out there, perhaps to
alleviate or some concerns of constituents, or to cater to some constituents every year. And that's what the funnel week is kind of for, to make sure that the good bills that help out all Iowans, as compared to the targeted bills, don't move on for the session. Is that a fair way to put a fair synopsis?
Oh, I believe so. And I think, just to add perspective, that most policy bills, when we look at statute changes, often take 3 to 5 years to pass the House. And when you look at that process, it's a more than 1 year process, or even more than one session process, to kind of refine the bills and find what people are looking for in affecting good statutes.
I know the governor signed the changes to voting laws in the state of Iowa last week, and it's been announced that bill is going to be challenged in court. In your mind, the bill that passed and was eventually signed by the governor, why was it necessary?
Well, I believe that the most essential component was the portion of the bill that dealt with putting in a penalty for local election officials when they do not follow the law. We had 3 court cases, 3 instances where local election officials did not file Iowa election law. Court intervention to judge injunction to follow the law were required. That was done in a brief and timely fashion, so the corrections could be made, so that our overall election process went well in Iowa. But other states have had these rulings come in long after the election, similarly, where local election officials did not follow their state laws. So that is a vital component. There's other issues that are being addressed in the bill. We did not necessarily have an opportunity to vote on each individual piece, even with various amendments that were offered. So, we passed a packaged bill that I think meets, it's above average for all the states in the nation, looks at components of Democratic states, controlled states, as well as Republican controlled states, in having good, sound, consistent election laws that are predictable. The aspect of court challenge is not surprising. And I believe once it goes through that process, it'll just reaffirm the position that the legislature has taken.
Anytime you change voting laws, people are going to say you're trying to suppress votes. So how do you answer that claim in relation to this specific bill?
Well, over the past, this is the 5th year I'm here, and over the past 4 years, we've had an election bill every year. Some of them are technical corrections. We've had some other legislation. Every bill that we've passed, there's been claims of voter suppression, and yet this last election, we've had a greater turnout than ever. So I think that to make that claim is probably an illegitimate claim based on the past turnout. It's important not only in voting rights, but we have voter responsibility, and having people know and understand what the election laws are, where there's a time for advance voting, there's an opportunity to vote by mail, to vote by absentee in person, or vote on election day. We give plenty of opportunity in a 3-week span of time in order to accomplish that. And I think as long as people understand what the law is, they can carry out, make plans, and vote as they need to in order to make their vote count.
And I know the state on the executive side of things is dealing with a lot related to the vaccination related to COVID-19. Does the legislature get involved in that at all, or is that just pretty much an executive branch jurisdiction?
Certainly we're involved when constituents make requests or ask for information, but it is, we have no control or say in the process at this point in time. The executive branch has that authority and responsibility, does it in conjunction with federal law, and there's a federal health emergency in place. We have a state health emergency in place, and through those 2 conduits, these decisions are made. We have a predictable and known scheduling process as we come out. We are in a vaccine shortage timeframe. We have always been up to this point. We do see the supply expanding actually significantly over the next 4, 6, and 8 weeks. And I think that we'll have a much broader range vaccinations going on in May. But we'll still continue to increase the availability and the vaccines that go into play across the state here in the coming weeks. We're in Tier 2, was opened up this week to focus on our food chain as well as our manufacturing sector.
Obviously, the last year has been unprecedented times related to the public health situation in our country and any of our lifetimes. And many states have put in emergency powers and emergency executive orders related to COVID-19. When you have a lot of decisions being made by one individual or one branch of government, that is maybe something that needs to be looked at on how to potentially handle a similar situation better down the road. Is there any conversation regarding the constitutional powers that the governor has had over this past year on maybe ways to tweak that down the road, or being the fact that we're still dealing with it, can we have that conversation yet?
Well, my personal opinion is I think it's prudent to wait to have that conversation, that having discussions around that at this point in time, particularly in Iowa. I think there's a general consensus that the Iowa governor, Reynolds, has been pragmatic in her use of powers, that she has not been overly restrictive, but made necessary rules around what we need to be, as well as setting examples and expectations. Other states have had other experiences, and we hear some of the conversations in those areas. But my personal feeling is that that's something that we can wait till next year, that we can work through this session. We can learn from it, have a chance to look back and make improvements or put guidelines on what expectations are from the position we are right now. We'll have a much better perspective.
And final question on a way less serious front, the Iowa Senate approved a bill that would remove the requirement that license plates be attached to the front bumpers of some vehicles. I know, I believe Senator Waylon Brown was one of the sponsors of that bill in the Senate. Is this something that you would support on the House side of things, or what more information would you need than the bill that passed the Senate related to that law?
This is a topic that's come up nearly every year for the past many years with interest. I think generally there's been division over is it a good idea or not. We haven't had it in the House. We'll come to the House, so I'll take a serious look at it. I am certainly cognizant and sympathetic to the aspect of law enforcement, of being able to identify a vehicle that this is an option to maintain. And I'm a little hesitant to make a change from our existing way of doing things with the front and rear plates. I know that there are arguments with newer vehicles when we have more instances of sensors in bumpers, those type of things, that a front-mounted license plate can be a challenge for some vehicles. And I don't know how that is, necessarily working with our manufacturing process, but it's certainly something the car industry is aware of. So I just don't know how much weight that argument carries.
All right, Mike, we appreciate the legislative update as usual and look forward to talking to you here in a few weeks.
Well, thank you, Darren, for your time today. I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation with you.
State Representative Mike Bergan. Time now for our monthly check-in with the Decorah Superintendent Mark Lane, seeing what's going on in Decorah schools. And Mark, exciting day coming up on Friday as the kids are going to be out of in-person classes, but for an awfully good reason. Tell us about what's coming up on Friday.
Yeah, we have our second round of COVID vaccination for our staff, for the St. Ben's school staff, and then Crossroads Academy, the special needs program here in the community as well. And so we're excited for folks to have the opportunity to get their second dose of vaccine. In total, we will have had, I think it's right at 285 individuals that will have, at the end of the day Friday, have received their first and second rounds of COVID vaccine, and being able to work with these local partners, with St. Ben's and with Crossroads Academy, and then with Winneshiek Public Health to make this happen is really exciting, and to be able to just give people that opportunity to have the vaccine. And on that first day when we gave the first round of vaccine, it was you could just feel the energy in the room, and people's excitement and just a sense of relief, I think, to be taking that step. And so I'm excited for our staff to take that next step and to have dose 2 under their belt, and just to again be able to have as much reassurance as possible that when they're coming to work each day, they're working in the safest environment possible, and puts them in the best position to focus on their work. And appreciate our school board and our community. We were originally scheduled to have our professional development day on March 1st, and the board took action to move that day. So we did have school for students on March 1st, and we moved that professional development day to March 12th, and teachers will spend the day engaged in professional learning, and then we'll step out, for the half hour, 45 minutes they need to be away to get their shot on Friday.
How many districts in the area, really how many districts in the state, have had the opportunity to pretty much vaccinate their entire staff and faculty?
I think it is really just a mixed bag. I think there are districts where their arrangements have been with their county public health to send employees in like groups of 10 to 12 at a time. And so that opportunity to get a vaccine, it's been spread out more over the course of a number of weeks. I know of a couple districts that were able to contract with like a Unity Point health system to create vaccination clinics on Saturdays. In my previous district, before I came to Decorah, Urbandale schools down in the Des Moines Metro, they created a contract with one of the hospitals in Des Moines, and they ran vaccination clinics on 2 Saturdays. And so I think it really depends on the approach a school district in collaboration with Polk County Public Health or with their county public health that they take. And so I think in Winneshiek County, the size of our district with the number of staff we have, it created the need to just create a unique plan. Southwind and Turkey Valley are smaller districts and don't have as many staff. And so being able to bring staff in or to administer vaccination in smaller groups worked for public health and for the school district, and doing it all at once was a good pathway for us, especially partnering with St. Ben's to do that too.
And when it comes to the issue of dealing with COVID-19 and guidelines and everything like that, I'm learned not to get to the car too far and ahead of the horse when it comes to this situation, because it's an ever fluid situation even a year into this. But related to the current guideline and the current public health edicts related to COVID-19, if the entire staff and faculty is vaccinated, will you have to worry about any potential COVID shutdowns in the future, at least as of this time, based on the current guidance?
I don't feel like we will. I feel like with vaccination and with the other mitigation strategies that we have in place, I think we've really stabilized our system, and it's more predictable than it was I would say in November and December. And so, our biggest concern in November and December was really around ensuring we had the staff capacity, that we had enough staff, enough adults in the buildings every day to have adequate supervision and provide a safe environment. And really, as we've moved through that challenging time and gotten through winter break, we've had a handful of staff and a few students each week that may need to be in quarantine or isolation, but it hasn't been as drastic as it was in November and December. And then you add in the layer of staff having the opportunity to receive the vaccination. I think we're going to continue through the remainder of this year. I would expect that we will, as we have all year, we'll have just maybe one or two staff or maybe one or two students at a building that may need to be out for a few days. But we should be able to have on-site in-person learning, adapt for those classrooms or adapt for that one or two students in a building that may need remote learning for a few days. But I think we would be in person and open throughout the rest of this year.
Another thing that you talked about, and it's always talked about this time of year, is setting a budget that will begin on July 1st for the next fiscal year. As if dealing with COVID wasn't enough, you presented that proposed budget to the board this week. What is that budget saying? What's are we talking about when it comes to levy rates, et cetera?
Yeah. And make sure I get my numbers right here. And so we'll have a public hearing at our April meeting. And so what we shared with the board last night was a presentation. And going back to a couple of years ago when Northwind and Decorah voted to consolidate into one district, obviously when you bring two districts together, it's likely that the tax rate isn't exactly the same in those two districts. And so in Iowa, and this is within Iowa code, there's a 5-year process of aligning tax rate. So we're wrapping up year 2 of that 5-year process. And so for the next few years, we'll establish annually 2 tax rates, one for the former Northwind district and one for patrons that live in the former Decorah district. And so what we will be proposing to the board in that April meeting would be for the folks in the former Decorah district, it would be $12.41 per thousand evaluation. And for folks in the former Northwind district, it would be $12.22 per thousand evaluation. That's a little bit different than it was this past year. This past year for Decorah, it was $12.40. And for the former Northwind, it was $12.02. But as I said, as we get through the next few years and through that 5-year window, we'll get to a point where it'll just be one tax rate for all patrons of the district. It just takes a few years to get to that point. And one of the things I shared last night with the board, as we moved into January, I always share information with our community about school supplemental aid and a rate of increase. And that really is a fundamental part of the formula for funding schools, and the Iowa Association of School Boards and other organizations that lobby on behalf of education had really hoped that we could achieve a 3.75% increase in state supplemental aid. The legislature and then the governor signed a couple of weeks ago a state supplemental aid increase of 2.4%. And so, I think one of the things that is a part of school finance is I always think of, our annual budget kind of as a bucket, and you fill that bucket with funds, and some of those funds come from local property tax, and then other funds come from state aid. And so it's that combination of local property tax and state aid that fills our bucket each year. And the combination and the way that SSA was set this year, that formula, it did cause our tax rate to go up a little bit more than it has the last couple of years, and really points to me to why we were advocating for 3.75%. So that rate I talked about for folks in the former North Wind District at $12.22 that we're proposing for next year, had the legislature and the governor set SSA at 3.75%, that same bucket of money would have been put together a little bit differently with local tax rate and state supplemental aid. That former North Wind tax rate would have been $12.05. And so I think it's important that our constituents and folks in our communities understand just kind of the basics of school finance, the way that it is a combination of local property tax and state supplemental aid. And when that state supplemental aid percentage was lower, it caused us to have a little bit higher local tax rate than it would have if it had been that 3.75%. And so that's really why I think, each year as a superintendent, as a board, we advocate for what we think is a reasonable state supplemental aid increase because we think that's in the best interest of local taxpayers and to be able to keep that tax rate stable and predictable, but also then to fill the bucket in what we think is the most equitable and fair way possible.
When you talk about percentages related to state supplemental aid, we hear the 2.4. You talk about the proposed increase that the Iowa Association of School Boards and Districts wanted at 3.75%. That's 2.4% of what? That's 3.75% of what? Can you break that down a little bit further?
Yeah, great question. So really the fundamental building block of school finance is per pupil cost. So what does it cost to educate one student in an Iowa school district? And this school year right now, that number is $7,058. So for every student in a public school in Iowa, that funding formula, each student is generating that $7,058. That's coming in, and that's what's going to fill that bucket. So that bucket is $7,058 times however many students we have. And then there's some subtleties of weighting. So for example, a special education student that requires some additional services, a special education student, depending on what services they need, they may be weighted as a 2.21. So instead of $7,058, that student is generating over $14,000 because it costs more to educate them. Because they have some special needs that may require an associate, may require some unique programming. And so the fundamental building block is that per pupil cost of $7,058. And so when we say we want an increase of 3.75, it's 3.75% of that number. At the 2.4% increase, I think our that funding formula for fiscal 22, that increased that state per pupil cost to about $7,220. And so you take that number times how many students are in your district, and that's really the building block of your budget. Now, within that 7,058, that's where part of that comes from local property tax, part of it comes from state supplemental aid, and you fill that bucket with that combination. And honestly, every district is a little bit different. It depends on your valuation in your district, the property valuation. So in Iowa, we think a lot about we have property rich districts and we have property poor districts. So typically the most property rich district in Iowa people point to is actually Okoboji.
Wow.
And so it just because of the value of property around the and so Okoboji's bucket, it gets filled up mostly with local property tax. A property poor district is maybe a property poor district, maybe a district that doesn't have a lot of business, doesn't have a lot that maybe has lost some business over time. And so there's less property valuation. So more state aid is going to fill that bucket in that district. And every district is kind of in between, the most property rich and the most property poor in the state.
And I know like local property taxpayers just want to hear the bottom line of how much property taxes am I going to pay and how much of this is going to go to a school district. The way you explained it, and I know I've had these conversations with every superintendent I've talked to, there's a lot that goes into school funding. Is it a little bit frustrating that like us media types and regular folks, we want to hear, hey, what's the bottom line, when the bottom line consists of A through Z and then some?
No, I mean, I think it's understandable. I think it's a part of just the expectations of being a public entity, that you need to be transparent, and you need to be you just need to be honest and open with people about what you're doing. And you know, I think it is incredibly complex. And so that's why trying to make it as simple as possible. And I use that bucket analogy, and you know, there are nuances within that filling of the bucket, but I think if people think about that bucket and think local property tax, state aid, some combination of that is going to create our school funding, they have that basic understanding and can appreciate then when we talk about, well, our local tax rate is going up 10 cents this year, have just a general understanding of why that might be. Part of that for us this year is because we did experience a little bit of a decline in enrollment. I think part of that is tied to COVID. And so we don't have as many students in our count this year. So that causes a little bit of a need for that part of that increase to continue to fill that bucket appropriately for our district, because we just don't have the same number of students. And so, you know, I think it's those honest conversations with people that hopefully, you know, hopefully they build trust, that we're trying, you know, we're trying to do the best we can for kids, but also be as responsible as we can be to taxpayers, that we're using that funding well, and that we're being fair and equitable to them.
And I'm also figuring out why I took algebra in high school, when you get into all these different factors of a budget. One other thing that's always fascinating to me when it comes to a school budget is the requirements that the state puts on districts and the services that they must provide. When you really get down to it, your local school board and your local district really doesn't have a lot of control of that big piece of the pie that you talk about. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's all formula driven, and that formula is really established in Iowa code around school finance. And so, you know, being able to really manipulate that in really significant ways, that doesn't really happen at the local board level. Because if you were to go to our board packet and look at what Kathy, our business manager, prepared for our board yesterday, it's basically a printout of an Excel spreadsheet that is, you know, it's hundreds of cells long. Well, that spreadsheet, that Excel spreadsheet, is created for every school district by the Department of Management, and there are less than 10 cells on that spreadsheet that aren't locked. You know, like, they are formula driven. We can manipulate about 10 of them. Otherwise, it just is what it is. And so, you know, that board, I think, really, their primary responsibility at that local level is then that oversight and saying, as a local entity, are we spending our money the way the state says that we should? Are we being accountable and responsible to our local taxpayers? Are we getting our money as a local school? Are we spending it in a way that is closest to students and making the most impact for students? And so, you know, we do comparisons, and we'll look at and say, you know, what percentage of our annual budget goes to staffing? What goes to our keeping the lights on, right? Electric and utilities and things like that. And we want to make sure that you know, we're spending that money wisely. We're spending that money on students. And so we'll compare ourselves to other districts in the state. And if we see something that's out of whack, we want to make an adjustment to that. And so it really is that more that oversight. And then I would say also then setting vision and setting plans for the future that really happens at that local level.
When you say you compare yourselves to other districts around the state, obviously like the Decorah district is different than West Des Moines Valley than it is maybe like Springville, a smaller district down by Cedar Rapids. Who do you compare to when looking at other districts?
So I like probably what I find to be one of the most meaningful comparisons in our state is looking at yourself in comparison to other school districts that serve about the same number of students that you serve. And so each year I'll look and just run a report for myself of who are those districts that serve about the same number of students that we do. And so in that group, you would see school districts in Iowa like Carroll, Ballard of Huxley, Knoxville Schools, Grinnell Newburgh, Sergeant Bluff Luton, over by Sioux City, Winterset Community School District, Perry. And so because schools are funded, because our funding is driven by the number of students you serve, I think it's meaningful then to say, well, how do we compare and how we spend money to those other districts that serve about the same number of students? Yeah, to compare us to West Des Moines, who's serving 16,000 students, that's a very different entity than we are. But comparing ourselves to Carroll or Winterset that serves about the same number of students, I think that's a much more apples to apples comparison. And so that's really that group I'll look at and say, when we think about the kinds of courses that we offer, when we think about student to teacher ratios, when we think of the percentage of our annual budget that goes to salary and benefits, those are the schools that I would compare us to, and that I would say, do I notice anything that really stands out as being different when I compare to that group? And if so, let's dig in and examine why that might be.
Another matter the board took care of on Monday night was the school calendar for next year. And let's hope it's a regular school year next year. That's first and foremost on everybody's mind. When's school going to start? When's school going to end in 2022? And is there anything drastically different? And I use that term in quotes, knowing the fact that this year and last year were drastically different for other reasons.
Absolutely. The current school year that we're in this year, this was our first year moving to an hours-based calendar, where we're marking our instructional time for students for the first time in Decorah in student instructional hours. We have to have students in instructional circumstances for at least 1,080 hours. We're going to continue that, so that is staying the same for next school year. And really, fundamentally, our calendar is basically the same calendar that it was this year. A few years ago, the legislature passed a law that said that schools could not start school before August 23rd. There were, I think, there were concerns across the state about some school districts that had been starting school earlier and earlier, and it was crossing over and infringing on some of the time of year when the Iowa State Fair was. And so that hard date of August 23rd has been in existence now for a few years. So August 23rd is a Monday this year. And so that's our first day of school for this coming school year will be Monday, August 23rd. I believe our last day of school on the calendar, I think, is Tuesday, May 24th, if I'm remembering correctly. One of the big question marks, we established our calendar for next year, and those dates are set, and when we would have professional development days for teachers, when the spring break, the Friday before, and the Monday around Easter weekend, we would have those days off. That's in our calendar. The big question that we didn't answer last night that we will need to before the end of the school year is what our approach will be to emergency weather closures. We have the option this year because of the governor's proclamation in relation to COVID. we've had the option for the first time to do remote learning on an emergency closure day. If the emergency proclamations that the governor has in place for COVID go away for next school year, then currently, unless the legislature takes action, the ability to have snow or emergency makeup time be remote learning, that would go away as well. The Senate and House currently are in session, and there's some conversation to extend and create some new legislation that would continue that option for schools to have the choice to do some remote learning on emergency closure days in the future. And if that passes before the session ends, then our board will need to make a decision if that's a practice that we're going to continue. We've done that this year. The first 2 days that we canceled for weather were just snow days. They're not going to be made up at the end of the year. And then we've had a couple other snow days since then where we provided remote learning. Students logged on and worked through their coursework at home that day, which means we won't be making up any days at the end of the year. That could be an option next year, but we'll just need to wait and see what the legislature does.
Anything we're missing, Mark?
We're excited. We sent track athletes to the Dickinson track meet yesterday down in Cedar Falls. And so to be moving into track and golf and tennis and what am I missing? Soccer season. Yeah, thank you. That it's just hard to believe we're there. We're there. And so it's exciting to be moving into that time of year. As a former baseball coach, this was the time of year when I started to get the itch to get out and start taking some BP and hitting some ground balls and fly balls. So just a great time of year for any school district when you're moving back into spring and those spring activities are happening. And so excited for those things to be opportunities for our students. And, I was just really, really impressed in the beginning of the school year, the way our teachers engaged in, thinking about ways to be creative and getting students outside and doing some outdoor classroom and outdoor learning activities. And I'm hopeful that as the weather allows for that again, that teachers will embrace that again, get kids outside, get out in the fresh air. There's no reason that some of those things that we did in August and September when the weather allowed, that we shouldn't continue to do those things, because I think they created a safe environment for learning. But I think it was just a good thing for kids too, to be out in the fresh air and the sunshine. And so excited to see those things too.
Mark, appreciate your time as always. Always appreciate the update of all the things going on in the Decorah Community School District. Look forward to our conversation next month.
Thank you, Darren. Appreciate all you do for us and getting the message out.
Decorah Superintendent Mark Lane. Our thanks to our guest on the program this morning, Leddia Tallman from the Waukon Chamber of Commerce, Turkey Valley Education Foundation Representative Dave Anderson, State Representative Mike Bergan, and Decorah School Superintendent Mark Wayne. Don't forget, we are putting these shows on YouTube now, so you can actually see our town each and every week. We will put up the link at the River Facebook page, which is 94.9 and 99.1 The River on Facebook. We'll put up that link each and every week. So in case you missed the show, you can get the video version of our town each and every week. Our thanks to our guest, our thanks to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust, and our thanks to you for tuning in or logging on to listen to another edition of Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDC.